What is a dirty business tactic that you know and everyone should be aware of it? Story 1. I kept getting phone calls for a timeshare company. I agreed to come out on my day off to claim my prize. I walked around with a sales guy that kept trying to hard sell me on the buying in aspect of it. At the end, they sat me down at a table and tried to get me to give up $8,500 of my cash. I told him no. He came back and dropped it to $6,000. I said no again. He went off and talked to his manager, and he came back with a fantastic one-time deal of $4,500, and I said no again. He finally asked me why I came if I wasn't remotely interested, and I explained that his company kept calling me to get my butt in the seat. And even though I told the phone person I wasn't interested in a timeshare, that they kept calling, so if they were going to waste my time, I decided to waste his. I have never gotten a phone call from them again. Sometimes it's worth some of your time to pay them off to get taken off the list. Story 2. When I was in the process of moving into my current home, I transferred the title of my old home and land to my sister because she was buying it and moving in when I left. Within the next few weeks, she started getting all the welcome to the neighborhood coupons and flyers. She didn't even change her address, so I assume companies track title changes with the Register of Deeds. The sketchiest part was a pest control company claiming to have an existing account on the property and recommending she continue to use their services. They detailed dates and changes, referenced termites. It was all lies. All the dates shown were while I owned the property, and I never even heard of this company before she received that letter. Edit. People are prying, and I don't want to give too much info, but this took place in North Carolina. I am aware that title changes are public record, but I was surprised by the speed. The small town I live in can take up to 2 months to update their online public databases. Clearly, there are ways to get the info I was not aware of. Story 3. Fake reviews. I worked for a startup that had a sleazy CEO and got most, if not all, of their business by fake Yelp, Google, Glassdoor, and other review sites in our industry. The CEO was a compulsive liar and had no morals. Side note, I left the company and crap went straight downhill as it was a house of cards anyway and I had a key position. The CEO ended up calling his business partner of 3 years and telling him that all the money was gone and he is leaving the country forever, then didn't leave. He still has the company open with a much smaller staff and can only imagine what he is saying to keep it afloat. Okay, done with the rant. It is easy to fake reviews now since they are usually a bit more eccentric and polished, and I have lost all faith in them. Yeah, I've gotten to a point where the only positive reviews I kind of trust are 3- and 4-star reviews that definitely have some complaints but otherwise like the product enough to recommend it. Anytime I see a glowing 5-star review, I get real, "How do you do, fellow kids?" energy. Story 4. Fake claims of another house offer with 0 contingencies. We were young first-time home buyers. We found a house that we loved and was in our price range, albeit the high end of our range, but in there nonetheless. We entered into negotiations with the seller's agent. While my husband and I were thinking the counteroffer over, we received another call from our agent saying the seller's agent received an offer from someone with no contingencies. They could pay cash and sign that day. We knew we couldn't compete with that, and our agent urged us to rush over to her office to sign their counteroffer and hope they would accept it since we made our offer first. Of course, they accepted because there was no other offer. All this went down, we were sharing our story with family and friends, and we came to realize the seller's agency plays this card frequently. I wish my husband and I had been in a better place to fight their tactics, but we were buying in a location that didn't have many good houses in our price range. Story 5. I worked at a Nissan dealership as a car salesman, and it was made abundantly clear to us that all of the advertised prices and sticker prices were 100%. I even remember one of the managers telling us a new commercial went out and referred to it as a bunch of lies that are going to get people in the door. Edit. I should add something a few people mentioned and I left out. Technically, that price is real, but it's for a vehicle with literally 0 add-ons. Meaning no power steering, no power seats/windows, nothing but the most basic of basic car packages, and basically non-existent because no one would pay money for that travesty of a car. Story 6. A local lawn maintenance business takes advantage of unsuspecting customers in 3 ways. 1. On monthly bills, they double the state tax. Instead of being, say, 6%, it'll actually be 12% if you check the math. 2. Without discussing it with the homeowners, they charge double for double cuts when the grass is a little taller in areas than usual. So if you had agreed to pay $50 per mowing, the monthly bill says $100 for each visit. They never ask, they just do it and charge double. In most cases, it's just a small patch of the yard that has taller grass, not the entire thing. 3. They're supposed to mow once per week, but without telling customers first, they start mowing every 5 days, which means they get to charge for more mowing visits per month than necessary. I just don't think I would want to pay someone to do my lawn. Some days it's my excuse to get out and get a little activity, and frankly, it's prime podcast listening time. But if I did pay someone, you can be damn well sure I would be furious if they pulled up like this. Story 7. I work with a lot of different body shops, and in my area, the big thing to do is to enhance the damage to customers' cars. I don't mean they try and negotiate harder, I mean they actively create more damage to previously undamaged panels, usually in ways that don't affect the function and are hidden to the customer in order to get the insurance company to pay them more money. In my area, while not every shop does this, I would say the honest ones are the minority. And it screws the customer over in the long run. The shop might promise that they will save you your deductible, but in the end you end up with a car that has unrepaired damage, or you have to pay out of pocket if the insurance company catches the shop enhancing. And the sad thing is, there is almost no way to know which shops do this when you pick a shop. Story 8. People lie about salary, starting pay, raises, etc. all the time. Learn to play hardball. For a multi-million-dollar company, another 10 to 20K is nothing. My office had a lockdown on raises over 3%, and going into an annual review, I learned that my boss had lied and underpaid me for the starting position. He claimed they had a $60,000 budget for the position and couldn't exceed it. I found out the last person in the job got paid $75,000. So I got an offer from a competitor over double my current pay. They knew they couldn't afford to lose me with the amount of work coming in, and slid my offer letter over to my boss during the review. They matched the offer, gave me a $10,000 bonus up front, and even cut me into a percentage of a business line. The meeting was awkward as hell, and it was difficult to do, but it's business. I hate confrontation, but I've had to do this. When I took over delivery supervising for the bakery I worked at, I knew the previous supervisor was paid $14.50 an hour. When I took the job, the owner of the company said $12.50 was the starting pay and not a penny more. So I said, the previous guy was a close friend, told me it was $14.50, and I know you'll work me to death. You can pay me $14.50 or I, the only person who knows the routes and orders, will quit. Right here and now. I got my $14.50. Listen to the OP, folks. Play hardball. Story 9. Getting solar panels on your house by lease or power purchase agreement is a horrible deal for a homeowner. You save a small amount on your bill but are tied to the agreement for 20 plus years while the company that actually owns them retains all of the tax benefits. Edit. It's not free. You pay for the power the system produces, albeit usually at a lower rate. However, these savings are just as good with many solar-oriented loans that require no money up front, in which the homeowner retains the 30% federal and any state tax incentives. Edit 2. Solar panels have no moving parts. The maintenance portion of a PPA is virtually negligible, as the equipment will be warranted, as is the workmanship if you just buy it. I will concede that it doesn't make sense to buy if you don't have a tax liability. Story 10. Multi-level marketing. They are almost certainly pyramid schemes. The top guy recruits 5 people, those 5 then each get 5 people, and so on and so on. The only way to make money is to have people underneath you. Lists of large multi-level marketing groups. 5 links. ANC Incorporated, Advocare, HL Enterprises, Ambit Energy, Amsoil, Amway Global, Avon Products, Beachbody, Bioperformance, Discovery Toys, doTERRA, Forever Living Products, Free Life, Fuel Freedom International, Fund America, Herbalife, Insogenic International, Juice Plus, Cleanies, Legal Shield, Life Vantage, The Longaburger Company, and LuLaRoe. Walter Marketing Consultants, and anyone who represents Constellation Energy or Direct Energy Level. Story 11. The average group memory is around 6 months. An outsource I worked for knew this. and so would ramp up the elite engineers right after signing a new contract in the honeymoon period to get the project work pipeline going, and 6 months before renewal would do the same. And in the interim, deliver a mediocre just enough to meet SLA service because it literally didn't matter. As long as everything appears to be getting better the 6 months before renewal, that counts much more in your favor than offering utterly stellar service the whole contract span. This also applies to politics and why there is an election season, and you'll see signs of good news 6 months before an election starts to come along. Story 12. If you're going to ask for add-ons with purchasing a vehicle, such as a hitch receiver, check Amazon for part prices and YouTube for installation difficulties. I had a salesman consult the shop to see how much this would cost for a Grand Caravan. He said it was going to be just over $1,000 after my purchase of the vehicle. Well, I didn't purchase from him, but months later installed one myself in less than an hour, in part due to the vehicle containing bolts already installed in the frame for a receiver. The name brand receiver only cost me $100. They were going to charge me $900 for an hour of labor. It's rough, but there are a lot of shady shops and dealers out there that will absolutely screw you over on things like this. Do yourself a favor and become good friends with someone mechanically minded, or really do your research on a good shop in your area. Story 13. Jacking Google business pages. Basically, if a Google business listing isn't claimed and controlled by a company, a competing company can weasel their way in and direct people to their business by, say, changing the phone number. There was an article recently about how drug counselors in the Philadelphia area had it happen to them. Their listing phone number was changed to an 800 number, which directed callers to an inpatient rehab facility in Florida. It was discovered when one of these counselors started noticing his patients suddenly not showing up. He called one of them and found out he was at this facility in Florida. Story 14. Car dealerships that tell you your financing numbers and say you're approved, then let you drive your car for a week so you can fall in love with it, and then break the news to you that your loan didn't actually go through based on unforeseen circumstances, and it will have a bit higher interest rate than they originally thought. I've seen them pull this multiple times, usually on younger adults or first-time buyers. When it happened to me, I took the trucking keys back in and dropped them on the table, made them rip up my check, and then started walking home. After they realized I wasn't bluffing, a salesperson raced to catch up with me in their car, drove me back to the dealership, and they cut the price on the truck down to match the original quoted payments. Story 15. I worked for a company that sold items for babies and expecting mothers. They had a return and repair policy. Seems okay at first, but then as an employee you realize what you're in fact doing is sending a 300-pound pushchair back to the manufacturer for 3 to 4 weeks. The wording was draconian. What people assumed was that they had 28 days to return their item, when in fact it meant that they could go up to 28 days without a pushchair. They wouldn't let us offer refunds while the original was being repaired, so we had devastated moms crying on the phone all the time. And they almost always ended up forking out another 300 pounds for a new pushchair. It was a pretty soul-destroying job and a really dirty business practice, especially when the clientele was pregnant women. Story 16. The bestsellers book lists are not actually based on the number of books sold to consumers. They are based on the number of books sold by the distributor. So if someone like Bill O'Reilly wanted to claim he had the best-selling book in America, his publisher could use a third-party clearinghouse to order 1 million copies of the book at a highly discounted rate, like 50 cents a book. The clearinghouse can then turn around and sell those books to Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, etc. at a highly discounted rate, which is why you see certain authors, like Bill O'Reilly, always in the bargain bin. But even if nobody bought those books at the store level, the distributors can still report that 1 million copies of the book have been sold. It's honestly wild just what places like this are able to get away with. It's almost like you can't trust big businesses because they care more about money than the people they're taking that money from. Weird. Story 17. A locksmith I knew would rekey locks using old, worn-down pins, which caused the locks to stop working prematurely. Without the pins being crisp, eventually the lock jams or the key quits working. He would then await the inevitable call to replace them, rekey them with good pins, and be good to go. You can make an extra $65 a customer this way. We never did. I'm certified as a master locksmith, NLA and ALOA, but we repaired a lot of locks this charlatan fixed. We complained to the NLA and ALOA and got his bond status revoked. If you get a lock repaired and it doesn't feel as crisp as a new zipper when you put in the key that first time, they may have pulled this trick. Story 18. Drivers of the popular new taxi service, starts with a U, will stall and hope that you cancel the ride and they get the easy $5. This happened to me last week near LAX. 2 drivers tried this and I made the third guy admit to me that this is happening. One of them texted saying, "My car broke down. You need to cancel the trip." "Sure, pal. Your 2015 BMW just broke down." The third guy said it's easier for them to get you to cancel than to slug through LA traffic. If you wait it out in a standoff, they will eventually cancel. But you will be late for your meeting, like I was. Story 19. Debt collectors will have detectives call you from a number that appears to be a legitimate law enforcement agency when you Google it. It's actually a spoofed caller ID using a legitimate agency's fax number. The detective will threaten arrest and throw around names of local judges. The debt collector will claim to not know the detective who left the message, but will be willing to take care of your debt. Edit time. Yes, it's illegal, but it's very hard to prove, and that's why they do it. Law enforcement or courts will only call you in the case of theft, like a hot check, but will never call for an old debt. It's civil, and they don't have jurisdiction. I know a lot of people work jobs for less than moral companies at times, like Walmart, banks, you name it. I don't hold it against them because we all need to make a living and sometimes choices are sparse. But folks who do debt collecting and resort to sleazy, unethical practices, I just don't have sympathy for them. Those jerks. Story 20. In France, it's hard to fire or lay off people, so when big companies need to clean house a bit, they move the office to a new location quite distant from the current one. In the process, they reduce the office size from 50,000 seats to 30,000 because they've estimated that amount of people will resign rather than endure a 4-hour commute. But officially, totally, you still have your job if you want. We are not laying you off, but I need you in the office every day, or you could resign if you don't like the new location. Nestle did that apparently. It's fairly common now for multinationals around Paris. Story 21. When moving out of a rental apartment/house, make sure to take lots of pictures and ask the owner/landlord to do a walkthrough with you. Video the walkthrough. That way, if they do not give you all your deposit back, you have something to take to court versus a he said, she said, which you generally lose. When you turn in cable/internet equipment, make sure to get a full receipt showing what they took in and the date it was received. Scan this and email to a couple different email accounts. Comcast and others are bad about losing the equipment a couple years later after you forgot and then billing you. See ya. Story 22. Watch the ever-changing price of pre-packaged food goods at most grocery stores. One day the price may seem to go down, but if you check the weight, it has also gone down. Snack foods do this constantly. I like buying these breaded frozen chicken breast fillets at my local grocery store, been buying them for a long time. They were $11.99 Canadian for 908 grams, 2 pounds. Last week, they were $11.99 Canadian for 750 grams, 1.65 pounds or 1 pound, 10 ounces. That product just went up 21% in price. Edit, as Preparing to Code pointed out, it's a 27% price increase, not 21, even worse. Story 23. The 3-tiered pricing approach, especially for things like roofing or basement waterproofing. The contractors start with a ridiculously high-priced quote for way more stuff than you asked for, steps down to a more moderate quote of what you wanted with a few bells and whistles, then the third quote is what you requested. This gives you the illusion of choice and reduces sticker shock because although your requested absolute minimum service is really expensive, it's only half the cost of their recommended repairs. By the time I'm done with this thread, I'm not going to trust a single business out there. Time for me to pack up all my things, go live in a cottage in the woods, and just do all my own home repairs and everything. It'll be a harrowing but fulfilling 3 months of my now much shorter but freer life. Yay. Story 24. Mechanics and other car service places will often put many additional tasks/replacements on your bill or imply that you should do things immediately. While many of their recommendations are things to keep in mind, often the tasks they are talking about are not immediately necessary and can be put off for a while before there's an issue. This in no means is me saying that you shouldn't regularly take your car for servicing. Story 25. If thou art in Sweden and want to start a company, don't pay for anything. It's totally free via verksamt.se and skatteverket.se, and anyone that tries to make you pay for handling paperwork or something to do with the startup administration is probably a scam. This happened to my friend that lost about 2,000 kronar. Edit. Spelling. Look, you can change the spelling however you want. There's no way I will pronounce those Swedish words correctly. I just hope I got the currency right. I could go check online, but what are you going to do if I got it wrong, Sweden? Come at me. Story 26. My elementary school would host a fun day every year where there were booths, games, activities, etc. They'd get the kids to help out with various small tasks too. One year when I was about 9, my task was to help sell the little potted geraniums, 25 cents each. Well, no one was buying any of them, so I had a brilliant idea. I made a new sign that said, "Buy one for $1, get 3 free." Those little geraniums sold like hotcakes after that. I was so proud of myself, I told the principal. He did not approve, though he let me do it anyway. It's a wonder I didn't turn into a little Gordon gecko. Probably only the bonitis kept it in check. Story 27. I was a waitress at a family-owned restaurant that paid me 10 cents more than the minimum wage. They were able to require me to turn over old tips that I never saw again because they paid me over minimum wage. I think this is technically legal, but sleazy nonetheless. I made really great tips, and it was hard turning the money over. It's also pretty deceptive to the customer who thinks their money is going to the waitstaff, not the restaurant. Story 28. Be careful if your friend from high school messages you out of the blue on Facebook. They have something to sell you or some pyramid scheme they want you to join. Edit. Might. Edit 2. Multi-level marketing companies ruin/tarnish the relationships between family and friends of people that work for them. If you've never had someone try to rope you into an MLM, I envy you. I've had quite a few folks try to turn me on to MLMs in the past, including family and friends, and it is really hard to not just say, "You know this is a scam, right? You are literally trying to rope me into a scam so I can lose money, and then try to get other people to lose money so some jack-off at the top gets all our money." But you feel bad because they're a victim, so you just keep trying to find ways to politely turn them down, but they just keep pestering you. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 29. For UK people, I'm sure a lot of you have had people at your door offering you a free loft insulation top-up, usually calling themselves loft surveyors. See, it's true that for a while, maybe still, you could get a top-up free if you were on child tax credits or have some over 70 living in the home and the insulation was below the joists. Thing is, when I used to do this, we 90% of the time forgot to mention it and people were footed with a bill once the roof people turned up. Story 30. In Nova Scotia, Canada, severance pay is paid on the average of your last 30 days of pay. This means that some companies will actually reduce your hours to minimum your last month with them if they're going to lay you off. Happened to my wife. She worked for this company for 5 years, worked 35 plus hours per week. Suddenly, she wasn't getting shifts. Boom, layoff notice. Happened to other folks too. Story 31. When I worked at H&M, we used to do some sneaky stuff with setting up the mannequins/displays. Whenever we had a supply of shirts that were really ugly and weren't selling well, we'd put the ugly items on the mannequins and it would sell out very quickly. This isn't necessarily the dirtiest trick, but it worked pretty well for pushing really ugly clothes. Story 32. Buying a car from a buy here, pay here dealership? You put $500 to $1,000 down, they say you are approved and you can drive the car home. 2 days later, the dealership calls and says that they couldn't get you financed at that down payment and interest rate, so we need an additional $2,500 down, and your interest rate doubles. If you don't have the extra money, they take the car and your original down payment. This is in Arizona. This is a few strikes already against car dealerships. Then again, I think a lot of us are already well aware of just how shady dealerships can be. Story 33. In high-end IT, vendors will often go dark in the months before a service contract renewal or infrastructure refresh is needed. The idea behind this is that the customer is forced to come to them, or they can come to the customer with little enough time to complete the refresh that they are either forced to make a purchase on bad footing for price negotiations, or renew service agreements for an additional year at a higher rate while migrating to new gear. Story 34. Placing the most profitable items at eye level. Worst deal for you, and the best value for money items in hard-to-reach places. Making you walk past all the items in the store due to design, for example, IKEA. Edit, this isn't dirty in terms of legality, but in terms of sneaky tricks that aim to get more money from you. Story 35. Real estate gurus who sell their courses online in downloadable digital format and say that we must buy now since they only have a few courses remaining and when they're gone, they're gone. How the do they run out of digital downloadable courses? Do their computers run out of binary ones and zeros after so many downloads? Sounds stupid, but people fall for this ploy regularly. Gaslighting. People in the corporate world will deny and make stuff up. Save everything. Write emails you don't have to just so there's a record of your actions. Be meticulous in covering your so when the day comes that they try to inevitably throw you under the bus for their own mistakes, you can say, yeah, but on this date we communicated this. It's generally pretty good advice to cover your any time you are dealing with any sort of company that might have any reason or ability to screw you over. Because a lot of the time, if they think they can get away with screwing you over, they will. Story 37. When my grandmother was in the hospital, her landscaper and handyman both contacted me to tell me she hadn't paid them and they'd been trying to reach her and on and on. I'd already paid both bills from her account, and when I questioned them, they remembered real quick. Story 38. When you find a home for your elderly parents, set up an appointment, but come in a few minutes early and say, don't ask if you can walk around for a quick look. The receptionist likely won't refuse you, and the salesperson won't be ready for you. These places like to show you only the stuff they want you to see when being led around by a salesperson. Chat with a resident or a staff member. They'll be the most honest with you. Story 39. The higher-priced items like prime rib and seafood is typically at the end of the buffet line, and cheaper, more filling options like bread and mashed potatoes are at the front. They hope you'll fill up your plate space/stomach space by the time you get to the high-ticket items. Story 40. Pitfalls in buying used sport/tuner cars are many, but the most crooked is swapping bad engines and parts into a nice body car. Some sellers will spend money on a pristine used car, sell the high-end parts for a profit, and swap a junk motor into the car. Always check matching VIN numbers from the head, manifold, and on the car itself. If they don't match, buy at your own risk. Story 41. Rental companies, specifically for vacation. They will say a certain condo/house is available on their website, but then when you call, they'll say it is now unavailable or just got booked very recently. Then they'll try to show you a different place, which is like $50 more a night, banking on the desperation of the tourists to just say F it and rent it. Well, then I'm definitely not dealing with rental companies. I'll stick with Airbnb, where nothing ever goes wrong, and there are no horror stories at all on the internet. It's definitely a safe bet that won't bite you in the Story 42. My mobile company offered me my same plan for something like $8 cheaper per month. I'd asked if there were going to be any changes other than the price, and they said no. It turns out overage charges went from $10 per gigabyte to $15 per 100 megabytes. Bastards. Story 43. An older fellow I know had a bodega, and he put a can of cream corn on the counter by the register. This was some time ago, so the van had a price tag of 17 cents. He sold that can of cream corn to everyone who bought anything there. If they realized they were paying too much, he'd just say that he thought that was their can of corn. Most people didn't notice, though, and he sold that same can of cream corn maybe 20 times a day. Story 44. Anyone who tells you that money is about to collapse and be useless and you need an investment in gold to protect yourself, but are then willing to sell you some of their precious and limited gold reserves for some of your soon-to-be worthless paper money, should not be listened to. Story 45. Whole wheat breads. Double-check the ingredients list. If bleached flour is listed at all, put it the F back. Sara Lee is notorious for this. Most of their whole wheat products are actually just food dye molasses that makes the bread darker. Story 46. Always, always, always count every single note when exchanging currency. It's so easy for vendors, particularly small ones, to short bills from a stack of 100 or 1,000 and claim innocence when, if, called out on it. Story 47. If someone from Microsoft calls you saying they are getting an alert that you have a virus, tell them to go F off. Microsoft will never cold call you for an issue like that. I feel anyone old enough to have read this thread or who is watching this video is probably more than aware of this, but in case you aren't, there you go. Now you can get back to focusing on helping out that Nigerian prince. Story 48. The freebooting Facebook is doing. Destin's video on Smarter Everyday Kurzgesagt video on the topic. Story 49. It's not dirty as it's legal, but there is a reason that stores ask you to donate some amount to a charity or fund. They can use your donation to help them get a tax write-off. Okay, as much as stores are sleazy in so many ways, this one isn't true, at least if the stores are actually acting within the law. When that cashier asks if you want to donate to whatever charity, the stores are legally acting as collection agents for your gift and cannot claim that on their business receipts or income. The donation should actually appear on your receipt so you can claim it if you want. I've heard people spouting this as fact a few times, but it is one of the few times where stores aren't actually being greedy. I mean, they might be getting publicity, or maybe the charity paid them to collect donations, I don't know, but they don't get to claim the donations. Story 50. If you ever get a demonstration of a service from a company, they will always use their very best, most experienced staff, but once you've signed up, you might find you've got the dregs that they couldn't foist on anyone else working for you. Story 51. Petco will sell you non-aquatic plants specifically for your aquarium that will poison everything in the tank. Story 52. If someone starts trying to trade away all their sheep because they have so much of it while they've been sitting on a development card for half the game, do not trade. Story 53. Some companies on Amazon will offer to refund your purchase of their item on PayPal if you give them a good review. That way it still looks like a verified purchase through Amazon. Story 54. Mattress stores that have the find it anywhere else for cheaper, you get your money back deal contract with the manufacturer to make the exact same model of bed, but with a model name specific to that store so nobody can ever cash in on that deal. Story 55. I waited tables in a restaurant and one time I decided to pour a cup of soup into an empty bowl. A bowl of soup costs a good bit more than a cup of soup at the restaurant. The cup filled up the bowl to the top. Well, now I know to order soup in a cup from whatever restaurant you happen to work at, in one of the extremely rare instances where I'm out to eat and decide that I want soup. Story 56. Every month and every 4 weeks sound similar but are different. Paying every month gets you 12 payments, every 4 weeks gets you 13. Edit. Thanks for the top comment. Just something my dad taught me when I first got a debit card. Story 57. I know a guy who does pest control who specializes in raccoon removal. He takes the raccoons from one house in one neighborhood, then takes and releases it in another neighborhood, then waits for the people there to reach out to him to remove the raccoon from their home. Story 58. Made from or with 100% something. Just because something is made with 100% of something doesn't mean that the thing itself is 100% that thing. Story 59. Offering insurance on anything that does not have the potential to be financially debilitating. Want to insure your DVD rental? F off. Story 60. If you're buying a used car, or any car for that matter, the check engine light should temporarily come on when you start the vehicle. If it doesn't, the dash has been tampered with to mask a potential issue. Honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say this might be one of the most helpful pieces of advice I've seen on this whole thread. I know there have been some good ones, but this one is really actionable. Well done, OP. Story 61. Not sure if they still do it, but if you call Comcast after 4 p.m. Central Standard Time to cancel service, they'll put you on hold and leave you there until they closed at 5. Story 62. Not sure if this fits, but if you are offered a raise for taking on new responsibilities, get it in writing. Just learn that the hard way. Story 63. The closing down sale and the shop that never closes down, it's just in closing down sales mode continuously. I'm amazed shops are allowed to get away with this. Honestly, most stores get away with saying they are offering sales when they really aren't. You ever walk into a store and see a TV that's MSRP is $1,500, but right now is only $1,000? Wow, that's $500 off, right? Folks, that TV has never been $1,500. Take this from someone who sold TVs. When we got the newest models, they were already well below MSRP, and they never went up to MSRP. If you have somehow bought a TV at full price, you have effed up in ways I can't even imagine. Story 64. Used to work for a self-storage facility where the first month's rent is $1, but that doesn't include the admin fee to do the paperwork or the not included lock that you could only get from us and only works at that facility. Story 65. Dish Network's door-to-door salesman will tell you that it's fine to use your parents' name and social security number for your account if your credit prevents you from getting service. This is not okay. It's identity theft. Story 66. When dealing with a salesperson, they will wait for a third hard no before ending their sales pitch. Story 67. Some stores increase the price of a product and then put it on sale by a percentage of the fake higher price. Hey folks who think you're getting amazing deals on Black Friday here in America? Guess what? That's not entirely fair. Some of the stuff really is cheaper because it's the truly awful generic versions of products that did so poorly they couldn't sell them normally. Story 68. I'm a financial advisor, and one of the things I do is get my rivals drunk in front of company executives. Story 69. Tell people the ice cream machine is broken past 10 p.m. No one is going to come inside and check. Story 70. We have many more clients interested in this limited offer. Story 71. Yelp is an extortion ring. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.